Alrighty, so good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for people who just sat through half an hour of me and Katie putting the world to rights in our networking. I said it earlier that the networking is sort of a new element that we are introducing and bringing in just to connect people to other people. I, as an individual, have seen huge progress and growth in both myself and my business just by connecting with people who do the same thing as me or something completely different, and they become amazing connections for lots and lots of different reasons. So thank you so much to anybody who joined the networking and or just went off and made a hot cup of tea. So I hope everybody has got a cup of tea ready. I am so excited for today. Katie, for lots of you, some of you will know her, some of you won't, so I'll just give her a little bit of an intro. I am one of Katie's biggest fans. Katie has been a huge fundamental part in our business as we've scaled very, very rapidly over the last 2 years. I've got to say, as an accountant, I didn't go into accounts to do HR, to manage people. The stuff you get involved in as a small business owner just continuously blows my mind, of things that I don't want to deal with, I'm not qualified for, and actually just need some help. And I'd say Katie has done 2 things for our business. The first is she is the support, the guidance, and like the straight line for our business. Again, like HR is something that can sometimes feel a bit wishy-washy, or like that you're not really sure where you stand, especially as if you've been an employee and then you become an employer, you're not sure. And so for us, Katie has been sort of the rule book, do this, do this, do this, implementing fantastic processes within our business. But then actually the second thing that she's done, which I was really, really blown away by, is actually like teaching us how to be good, strong employers, good, strong leaders. And we learn something every single we learn something new every single time we work with Katie. Katie just doesn't just like take it away from us. She teaches us how to grow the business in a way that means actually next time the same thing happens, if the same thing happens again, actually we can do these things by ourselves. And that's very, very empowering as a business owner. And has a huge alignment with the way that we run our business, educate our clients. And so for us, like the HR education piece, as well as the HR outsourcing, has really, really helped us do fantastic things within our business. I'll stop embarrassing Katie now, but it's really, really, really important for you guys to know that, especially within our community, we will only ever put you guys in front of somebody that we know, love, and trust. Katie is that person within our business, and yeah, I'm really, really excited to hand over to her. She's going to get stuck in for about 45 minutes, run you through HR 101 from ground zero to answering frequently asked questions. And then everybody, as you go, just get stuck into the chat. If you would like to ask a question anonymously on the drop down, just change the chat from everybody to me, and I'll ask Katie your question at the end. So don't worry, if you want to get into specifics, just send it to me, and no one else will know that you asked that question. Use the chat as we go throughout the time. So I'll handle the chat so Katie can concentrate on doing what she does. Yeah, pop your questions in the chat as we go, and yeah, let's go.
Okay, Rachel, thank you. Thank you for saying such nice things and for inviting me to chat to everyone today. I'm really thrilled and excited to be able to talk to you all about my favorite topic, which is growing businesses and small micro businesses and getting them started with HR. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping it's going to work. Right. Okay.
We got you. We can see your screen.
You can see me. Okay, wonderful. Right. So what your growing business needs to know with me, HR Katie. Hello. So welcome. I promise all of the slides don't do that. It's just that first one. So a very quick introduction to myself. I've worked in HR for more than 10 years now, and I'm qualified by the CIPD, which some of you may know, some of you may not, is the like governing body of HR. So it just means that I have some qualifications and I hopefully know what I'm talking about most of the time. I'm also a member of another organisation called the HRI, or HR Independence. So it's a membership organisation that's been specifically set up to help drive standards for independent HR professionals. So everyone in that network is all people like me running their own HR consultancies. So that's a really kind of useful thing to have, that I have this kind of network of people that I can go to. And also I was very pleased that I was made a finalist this year in their Emerging Talent Awards. So that was really, really lovely. That happened a few weeks ago. And then I started HR Katie in April 2021, so about 18 months now. And since then I've been working with other growing businesses, including, as Rachel has kindly said, StriveX and her wonderful team over there. Just a very quick slide, a little bit more about me. As I said, I'm a real human, I'm a real normal person, like I'm not the fun police. So just putting the human into human resources, I am a mum, I have 2 girls. I enjoy exercise, but I surprise people that my main form of exercise is weightlifting. Don't like running, don't really like cardio, but I do need to do some exercise because my other main activities and hobbies, as I said, is food and drink and watching TV. So if anyone needs any tips of good box sets, pop those in the chat as well, and I will do my best. I'll be honest, since the kids, I'm maybe not quite as relevant as I used to be, but I can have a very long discussion with you about Game of Thrones if you need it. Okay. So getting ready to employ staff. That's what we're here to kind of talk about today mainly. I know from talking to Rachel and from talking to other business owners, when they're starting out at this point, it can feel really scary and like really overwhelming to kind of like take that leap. It is feels like a really big leap, and it is a big leap. But hopefully knowing some of the steps you need to take will take some of that pressure away from you, and I'm here to sort of help build that confidence and make sure that you know that you're going in the right direction by following some of these steps. So I just want to say briefly before I start this, like, I'm not reinventing the wheel with this information. Like, this is all findable on gov.uk. They have a checklist and things of this, but I've just sort of put a bit more detail to it and things. But I just wanted to say that my original source for this is gov.uk. So this is all coming from the mouthpiece, as it were, of what you need to know. So first and foremost, you need to register yourself as an employer. So you need to get registered with HMRC 4 weeks prior to the person starting on your payroll, and that is so that you can make sure you can pay their tax and their national insurance, and make sure that it goes to the right place for the right person. You'll get a PAYE reference number as an employer. So you probably remember from when you're an employee, you see that reference number on your payslip. So you can run your payroll once you've got that number, and you can speak to Rachel James if you need to get set up for that. You also need insurance. You need employer's liability insurance. So that's a policy that needs to cover you for at least £5 million and come through an authorised insurer. So those are the things basically that you can't kind of fudge. Those are the sort of legal requirements to like make sure that you have in place. So registration, get the paperwork, that's where you go. You're also going to want to need to think about what type of employee you need. So will they be an employee? Do you want a full-time employee working for you, or will they come on board as a worker, which means they're maybe like self-employed, or they're coming under a slightly different set of circumstances, like 0 hours or something like that. So think about their employment status. Think about if you need someone full-time or part-time. For example, If you're thinking, oh, I really do need some help with like my admin or some of the like behind the stuff, but there's not enough for a whole person to do it. Well, it could just be a part-time person that comes on for a couple of mornings a week. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is, if you are taking on someone a bit more junior, would you consider taking on an apprentice? Because there's lots of support and government stipends available for apprentices. I spoke quite a long time ago once I was starting this about the Kickstarter scheme. And again, I think that's maybe how Rachel and I were sort of first in touch with each other. But anyway, that has now closed, so that doesn't exist anymore. But apprenticeships and apprentices is still very, very much a route available for people. So it is worth thinking about that if you are looking at the more kind of junior end of the market. If you need... Right, there we go. And then we talked a little bit about this in our pre-meeting networking, but you also need to check your responsibilities around pay and benefits. And the most important one that you need to know about is the workplace pensions. So on the pay front, you need to make sure you're paying at least minimum wage, and those rates do vary depending on age. So if they're older, you have to pay slightly more. If they're under 25, it's slightly less. You can obviously choose to pay people more than minimum wage. You don't have to pay minimum wage, but you have to pay at least minimum wage. And those rates change every year, and you can find those updated on the government websites. And the other thing to mention for people that if you're new to being an employee, you may not be aware of this, but every employer, regardless of size, even if you're only taking on one person, you have to make sure that you have a pension available for anyone who qualifies. So qualifies means that they are over 22 but less than state pension age. They earn at least £10,000 a year, and they normally work in the UK. I would imagine most people on this webinar, they're normally going to work in the UK. So this isn't a talk about pensions. I'm not going to go wax lyrical about pensions here, but basically it's just to say you need to be aware. You're probably going to have to set one up. People don't have to use it. There's a thing you can do called opting out, but it needs to be there and it needs to be ready to go. And then I think it actually comes once you register with HMRC. As part of that, your information will also get passed on to the pensions regulator, and then you get a letter each year where you have to declare your compliance basically and say if people are in or out, or if you have anyone that you're employing. So that's just part of, again, these kind of legalities and regulations that you need to be aware of. And then you need to recruit people. It's always important to say that we should always make sure that we're preventing discrimination by going through a fair recruitment process. I was asked recently by a new client if it's mandatory that you have to do like interview sheets for everyone so that you can really prove it's fair, as it were. And that's not mandatory. That's not like a legal requirement that you have to do interview sheets. Obviously, if you're a bit nervous about interviewing, or if you're new to it and you want to sort of have that, that's absolutely fine. And it is also worth mentioning that any candidate who comes to see you can request their interview notes. So, you should always be aware of being transparent and, as I said, non-discriminatory on any kind of information that you keep about candidates. So it's something that you could think about, but it's not like a legal requirement that you have to have interview sheets. But what is a legal requirement is that you have to be fair and you have to make your workplace accessible for employees. And that goes right down to the recruitment stage as well. So if there are any access issues or issues for any other reason, it's worth bearing in mind that you let people know those in advance. And then checking people's right to work in the UK. Thanks to Brexit, this has got slightly more complicated, but if you're employing a UK national, you can check their passport, keep a copy of it on their HR files, and it just proves that they are a UK citizen, and that means they have the right to work. If you're hiring someone who's from the EU, who is now living in the UK and they have their right to remain, they should be able to give you what's known as a share code, which you then go online and you can check, and it says, yes, tick, they have the right to work. And like I said, you should always see those in real life and keep a copy of those as well. The share code is slightly different because that is all done online, but again, you would just keep a copy of the confirmation that they're okay to work. As I said, thanks to Brexit, it's now not enough to just see someone's passport if they are from Italy, France, Spain, Germany. You have to see that they are already here with the correct ability to work, because if you're employing anyone who's coming from the EU just to work for you, effectively you would have to treat them now the same as you treat someone coming from like India or America or Australia. You'd have to get what's known as a sponsor license and sponsor them to work for your company, and that means that their job is tied to you and your company only. So it really has changed with everything that's happened in the last couple of years. So again, this is not me preaching about visas and decisions, but it's just worth knowing that there are a few things that you need to check for people if you are employing people who are not got a UK passport. And then you need to get your paperwork together. So anyone that you're taking on as an employee, you need to give them a written statement of employment. Most people call that an employment contract. If you're employing someone for more than 1 month, so if they're working for you for less than 4 weeks, technically you wouldn't have to give them any paperwork, but for someone who's going to be with you on a continuous basis, you need to make sure they have all their paperwork from you within the first 4 weeks of starting a role. And it's also good practice to make sure they've got a job description, so they know what they're doing and it's all laid out clearly. Worth just mentioning quickly, if anyone does need this kind of paperwork, their employee contracts, offer letters, those kind of things, that is something I can help with. I have what I call a new employer bundle available for just that very thing, to help people when they're just starting out with their new employees. And then this last one I'm just mentioning because it is relevant to some people, and I think, Rachel, is this relevant? Do accountants have to have DBS checks? I'm not actually 100% sure. No, but DBS checks are definitely in place for, like, if you're working in a school or you're working with children or vulnerable adults, basically. So it doesn't apply to everyone, and you can't just say, oh, it'd be quite nice to know if they've, like, got a DBS check. You can only use it for the correct purposes. You wouldn't be able to apply for a DBS check just for anyone. So I mention it because it's on the Gov website, but for most people attending this, I'm guessing they wouldn't need it. But if anyone is working with schools or vulnerable adults, something like that, then you need to get a DBS check in place. Okay, so quick recap. These are the main 7 things we need to worry about. It's the registering with HMRC and getting your insurance sorted out, deciding the type of employment and an employment contract that you need, check that you're paying them enough, make sure you go through your fair process for your recruitment, ensure they're eligible to work in the UK, get all the paperwork ready, and then DBS checks where necessary. So when you break it down like that, hopefully it doesn't seem quite so overwhelming of the things you've got to do. And each of those stages can be, as I said, addressed separately. It doesn't have to be this massive frog you've got to eat in one go and it'd be absolutely terrifying. So I'm going to talk now a bit more about the sort of the next stages, because I think this is the thing that Rachel and I used to spend the most time talking about once she started hiring people, is like, where'd you go? What do you do? You've got people, as soon as you have people working for you, technically, you're on an HR journey. So it may sound a bit sort of overkill, a bit overly complicated to have a strategy for HR for a micro business, but I'm here to encourage you to do it, to write it down, because having that concept really does help you communicate the key things that you want to achieve within the business, and obviously gives you a real starting point of like where you're going with your staff and your team members as they start coming on board. So yeah, it sounds a bit scary, but what is an HR strategy? How do you make one? I'm hopefully here to help you start building a workable plan. So first things first, recruitment and onboarding. So I talked briefly about recruitment before, but you're going to want to think about, publishing your job adverts. Who are your target applicants? Where do you want those things to be seen? Who do you want to be applying for your roles? There are specific websites for, say, accountants, specific websites for flexible working if you're looking to bring in someone just part-time. So there's lots of different kind of options and routes that you can go down. And obviously, as I said before, make sure you've got all those essential documents available and ready to go. So you've got the offer letter, the contract, and you get everything signed. But the other thing I really want to talk about is onboarding, because I found a statistic that said almost 69% of employees are more likely to work with the company for 3 years or more if they've had a positive onboarding experience. Like, first impressions count, basically. And I know people talk about that at recruitment, but they definitely count on your first day in the office. If you walk into the office and they're like, oh my God, are you starting today? Oh, we haven't got your computer ready. Like, oh, we better get IT. Ooh. I mean, that is just like, it makes you feel terrible. And I've seen it happen, unfortunately. And it just doesn't create a good impression, and it doesn't create the right kind of environment really from the off. So it really is worth spending some time to put together a more structured onboarding procedure before they start. Because it really does help you and them kind of understand where everything's going. It will help manage goals and expectations as well, because if you start with someone and it's total chaos on the first day, their expectations are that that's going to be total chaos from there on in. I mean, it might be, even if you have a really organized onboarding process, but that's not maybe the impression you want to give someone on the first day. And the other thing to say is, monitor how people are getting on in those first few months. Make sure you're communicating with them. Again, the amount of businesses I speak to that, like, when the employee comes to their end of probation meeting and they're kind of like, am I getting sacked? Like, that should never happen. You should never walk into a review meeting and not know like what the outcome's going to be. You should always be going into those meetings like knowing largely what's going to be said. Okay, sometimes you get bad news and you're not expecting it, but largely, if things are going well, they should have been made aware of it beforehand. So just keep that communication open. That's the kind of main thing there. So a coherent approach. Wouldn't we all like a coherent approach? When you're thinking about your goals and your plans. So I found this example, which I thought was a really, really good one. If you're thinking about your strategy, think about where it's going in the business. So, for example, if you are a service business and you are thinking you need more salespeople to get more clients in the door, once you've got all these clients in the door, do you then have enough customer services people to help with all the new clients? So it's thinking about, what is that process going to be? What is the progress of your client's journey? What is the progress of your company journey? How can you cater to like where you want to get from A to B? So you've got to think about the people side of that as well. You don't have to have, as I've said, a full organizational plan the day you open, but having those kind of basic frameworks and action plans in place will help you sort of understand the strategy of where you're going, because it really does give you focus of, okay, if we've got this many clients, this is the capacity that we have, but if we have this many clients, we are going to need more people to help service them. So it's just forward planning, thinking ahead, and being ready, basically. And then ensure you retain good employee relations. I'm just going to quickly jump in and say, what does employee relations mean, or ER? Because it basically describes the relationship between the employer's employee. But for a lot of people, when they hear ER, employee relations, they automatically go to the bad stuff, the disciplines, the grievances, the HR police, basically, as I said before, the fun police. So sometimes it does have those negative connotations, but effectively what it is on the whole, as a larger picture, is just ensuring that you retain good dialogue and communication between the management team, or you as the business owner, and the people that are working for you. So there are times that concerns happen and they can occur. So it does, it does help to have a plan in place, guidance in form of a process sort of ready to go. So you have a code of conduct or an employee handbook which lays everything out in advance. That helps you kind of stick to the same process each time as well, which is really, really important, because it helps give a sort of a method to giving that feedback, and also making sure you're consistent between people. Like if you keep having the same issue that comes up, for example, with like latecomers or hybrid working issues, then you can sort of ensure that you're making the same decisions where relevant with people. So people really need to understand their role within the business, where they fit, because then that really helps them understand the purpose of their role. And if you're having these clear dialogues and you're clear with your expectations, that helps people know where they stand. And so, as I said sort of briefly earlier, once a year formal appraisal, that's not enough. You need to be having these ongoing conversations, make sure they're engaged, make sure they're productive. You should never be going into an appraisal at the end of the year and being told, well, you've not been performing. Like, that's just not acceptable for the employee or for you as the employer, because what have you been doing about it if they haven't been performing all year? So it's just keeping the dialogue open is my main thing. Right, now I will go on to this one. And the other thing I wanted to say as well is that I know, again, it sounds a bit scary for like small businesses to be investing in development and training potentially. And to start with, sometimes that is very on the job, it's very ad hoc. But as I said, like onboarding, for example, that's a form of training and development. So making sure that you've got your onboarding nailed down will help provide employees with the skills they need to be competent, from kind of the outset. And as we've talked about a little bit before, again, like investing in your team, investing in their development is really critical. Most people who are kind of keen on developing in their role and in their work will want these kind of growth objectives. They'll want these sort of stretch targets or kind of new opportunities, transferable skills, etc. So giving them those opportunities, will help them grow with you, hopefully, and within your company, and then potentially move to something slightly different or take some of that burden off you. So it doesn't have to be anything other than kind of a two-way relationship. You shouldn't obviously be giving people training for training's sake. It needs to benefit the business as well. But those kind of regular development sessions either sort of with an external person coming in or with a manager to help understand how it relates to the business directly, you know, they can help increase retention as well, because people feel more kind of involved, more satisfied, kind of know where they're going, basically. And then other things to think about. So again, in the sort of the networking chat, we were briefly talking earlier about employee benefits and what things are available. So, you know, why do you offer benefits to your employees? It's like, well, what's the benefit for me as an employer to offer benefits? Because, you know, for employees, it might be that you're helping them save money or like improving their well-being. Obviously, there's a lot of these well-being apps out there now that some employers are investing in, encouraging like work-life balance, etc. But the benefit for employers is obviously you want to be able to keep the best people, and you want to be able to improve morale, you know, have a good company culture, because ultimately that means you're going to benefit if your workforce is more productive. You know, as Rach was saying, when they had their workcation, they saw productivity absolutely skyrocket because everyone was having a brilliant time, and it was just this then so focused on their work once you're kind of like have that good balance. So it's really interesting to think about some of the things that you could do. So some of them are, you know, the kind of core benefits, which is the holidays. Again, the statutory minimum is 5.6 weeks per year for a full-time person, which in layman's terms 28 days. And then the pension contributions that you have to make if people don't opt out. But as I was saying, there's other more flexible options. So you can look at healthcare, dental, gym, employee referral bonus. That's quite a nice one sometimes as well. Quite a lot of employers do that. And, you know, I don't know if people would even think of it as a benefit these days, but, you know, a hybrid working pattern, or being, you know, more flexible with people. Subsidized lunches, again, I know it's something Rachel and James do, like pizzas once a month or something like that. Yeah, free company events, workcation, anyone. Not that I'm like obsessed with Rachel or anything, but she's got some really interesting ideas about, you know, how to make a difference, basically. So yes, some of these may require a declaration on the benefit in kind, is what I have also said. So just again, make sure you speak to your accountant, StriveX, for more information about if you want to offer some of these slightly more different things. They need to just be declared. So yeah, and then the other thing I've talked about, like just as sort of a wider piece about what else you should be thinking about and doing for HR, assessing performance. I'll be honest, like when I first went into HR consulting and I was working with a startup business, I went in and had sort of like an HR surgery where I had like the people kind of coming in to chat with me. And the number one thing that they ask for, number one, is they want more feedback. So, you know, what is worth thinking about is like, how do you plan for giving constructive feedback for people? Because I know what it's like. And sometimes, I'll be honest, in my sort of first company, when I was working for a much bigger company, you know, we would be the ones chasing all the managers to do their performance appraisals, and then I'd turn around to my boss, the HR director, and be like, we haven't done ours yet. And she'd be like, oh no. So, you know, do as I say, not as I do. But it is so worth investing the time in having those conversations with people, because you know, you want to think about how to track those goals, you know, how to kind of assess whether the structure that you've got in place is working, and for them to know like how they're doing, how they're perceived. Because, you know, the worst thing again for an employer is if you've invested all this time and money and effort in bringing someone in, and then you just like leave them to it, and then they're gone out the door because they're like, oh well, I didn't think I was doing that good a job, and I've been offered this other thing. It's like, if they know that they're valued and they know where they can improve, etc. Like the chances of them staying with you and keeping those skills and knowledge within your business is much higher. And then it also feeds into the next point that I'm making about just creating that healthy working environment, because if you have these kind of recognition initiatives, if you have this feedback, if you have, you know, employee engagement, this high level of kind of people being involved and wanting to be there, you know, they're just so much more likely to stay with you. It's just true that, like, you know, we all spend so much time at work, or, you know, working, and you don't want to be miserable. Like, no one wants to be miserable at work. So it is worth the time and investment to sort of make that better. Again, actually, I have it on my LinkedIn, if anyone's on LinkedIn, and I've got it available on my Instagram link in a bio as well. I've put like a download together as well that's sort of a bit more about sort of some of the ideas for helping with create a healthy work culture. So if you want a copy of that, just let me know, or you can pop to my Instagram or LinkedIn to get a copy of that as well. And then, yeah, I touched on this before, that, you know, it may feel a bit OTT having some of these policies and procedures in place from this like very start, things like health and safety code of conduct. But if you invest in getting an employee handbook put together, it means that you've got everything sat there and ready to go. And I've added this in because my sister used to run an events business, and she was saying the thing that caught them out was this idea of custom and practice, which is an HR rule that you sort of become used to once you've been working in HR, and you kind of forget that people don't know about it. But custom and practice basically means that if you do something on a regular basis, my favorite example is like if an employer always shuts for Christmas, but then like gifts that holiday to their employees on top. If they were to turn around like now in November and say, oh, we can't close for Christmas this year, if you want it, you've got to take it out of your holiday. Custom and practice would dictate that they've always had those extra 3 days holiday. So you have to be wary of making these kind of sweeping changes, and, you know, these decisions that affect employees. They, you know, they could have a claim basically. So it's worth thinking about having some of these things in writing, put together, because it does save you, hopefully down the line, you know, you can be consistent from the off. And obviously, you know, things change. Those should be living documents. You sometimes have to amend them, update them. Obviously, legislation changes, etc. But it, you know, it is worth a little bit of investment getting all of that ready, because hopefully, as I said, it helps you down the line. And then just the other quick thing to mention, GDPR compliance. I know people freak out when they hear GDPR because they're like, I don't understand it. But basically all it means is keep people's information safe. If you have a team, you know, if it's not just one person you're taking on, if you have a team and there's multiple people, make sure that you have private HR files that not everyone can access. Make sure that they're safe. You know, that you've got adequate measures in place, or you know, it could just be on your computer, your like cloud, however you do it, or you know, you can think about investing in an HR specific system. There's like different ones on the market. I've named a few, like I've worked with some of them, but my HR toolkit, Breathe HR, Bamboos, these are ones people may or may not have heard of. But if you want the option, there are things in the marketplace that can kind of take that kind of off your plate. Sorry, I'm just going to pause my sharing a minute because my slides went a bit loopy. Sorry about that. Over the professional. So then the last part of this presentation, and I can actually see Michelle is on this call, who helped me with some of the content for this because she's more of a specialist in learning and development. But I also thought it was really important to talk about the kind of mind shift set that people have to go through when they're becoming the boss. You know, you go from as Rachel said, kind of being on your own, being on like, you're in charge of absolutely everything. This business is you are the business, you're this solopreneur, entrepreneur, however you want to call yourself. And then as soon as you start bringing someone on board, you've got to start delegating, giving them things to do. And it's not natural to everyone. You know, not everyone is cut out to be an amazing people manager. But it is a skill, and it is one that you can learn and improve on, you know, even if it doesn't come naturally to you. So I just wanted to sort of share basically some hints and tips to help you kind of like transition to that mindset space and just sort of understand like the differences basically. So solopreneur on the one side, and then the boss on the other side. So, you know, when you're on your own, it's everything is on you, it's your personal skills and expertise. But once you start taking people on board, you've got to look at the success from the team. So you've got to be looking at everyone and how that success translates, not just from you, but to everyone. You've built that business through growing your own relationships, but you have to think about how building relationships going forward will happen for everyone in the team, and also getting them to build their relationships. So it's a sort of an ongoing process. If you're bringing in tools and processes and procedures, it's all very well if you know how to use them, but they need to be in place for everyone to be able to use. There's no point having systems that make sense to no one else but you. So making sure that these tools help them do their role, manage performance, you know, communicate effectively, and set the tone of the business. I mean, this is a really big one for me, because the daily discipline of managing your own time and meeting project deadlines, like going back to being, you know, on my own again and having projects to deal with, versus then thinking about when I was managing a team of HR people and having to like prioritize for my team and have time in my diary available if they needed me. So it's, you know, you're not just working to your own deadlines anymore. You've got to sort of have that mind shift of like, I've got my to-do list, sure, but they also have a to-do list that they might need some input on. And that one for me is like the biggest. And the idea of like, sort of like trusting them to like manage their own deadlines, that sometimes it's more challenging than other times. And again, I know I'm speaking from personal experience with that one, but it's you know, it's again, it's about them learning and you learning at the same time. And then, yeah, the last one is like, obviously your integrity of your business when it is just you know, you're always sort of showing your own expertise and being a professional. But once you've got a team on board, you know, you have to be a role model, and you have to like show them what the company values are by living it yourself. So, you know, there's no point saying like, oh yes, we promote work-life balance, if your team see you sending emails at 10:30 at night, or, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning, Rachel. So, you know, it's about being a role model to other people as well, and like showing them how you want them to behave by behaving that way yourself. So yeah, so as I said, I'm not going to go on about this too long, and I'm also conscious of time, but like just the last bits I've said is like probably repeating myself slightly, but try and learn strengths and weaknesses of your team, because that will help you ensure that you divide work fairly and strategically. You know, if people need to build up their experience in some areas, you have to sort of like leave them to it sometimes. But also if you're working to a tight deadline, like don't give it to that person straight away. So just sort of knowing where to kind of distribute work. As I've said, be approachable, have these regular one-to-ones and check-ins with people. And you know, this regular feedback piece is just so important. And following up on action points, that really builds trust and shows you're the go-to person. So, you know, a classic example is if someone says like, you know, in your one-to-one, like, oh, I need to know blah blah blah, if you never get back to them on it, you know, that's so frustrating. If they're constantly chasing you saying, can you tell me, like, we were supposed to do this, try and do your best to sort of follow up on those things, because it really does help to build that trust point. And then, yes, don't always feel you need to be the expert. If you don't know the answer, don't just guess. Like, work with your person to work it out if you can, like, or find an expert to ask. Again, there's nothing worse than like kind of guessing and then getting it completely wrong and having to like undo it all. It's much better to be honest and open and say, I don't know about that, but let's go and speak to someone. And then just the last thing I've said is, a lot of time as a manager or as an HR person, sometimes you just need to listen to people. Sometimes they're not expecting you to have all the answers, and they just want to have a bit of a moan and they just need a sympathetic ear. So sometimes you just have to make time to talk to people, and it doesn't have to be that you're going to like be the answer or have all the answers, but just kind of being there and being available is really all they're looking for, and they just want someone as a sounding board. So it's just worth saying that, like, don't think you have to fix every single problem. You just sort of have to be there and show up. That's sort of really, really important. Yes, okay, so that is the end. Have we got any questions?
Alrighty. Yes, if anyone has any questions, just pop them in the chat. I was like frantically making notes as we were going because I'm just obsessed with everything that Kate has been talking about. There was a couple of bits just straight off the bat that I wanted to mention. So just on PAYE and pensions. So if you are anticipating scaling, anticipating growth, and anticipating changes to maybe hiring for the first time or scaling for the first time, just reach out to your accountant. For a lot of you, we are your accountants, but if there's actually quite a few other accountants in the group, and that's a really, really great way to add value to your clients. So for us, anybody that we register for PAYE, we automatically start having conversations with them about their auto enrollment responsibilities, the pension that we provide, how we can help you with that. But also we make introductions to Katie, and we offer every person for PAYE the employment bundle, which gives them access to all of the contract staff handbooks, all of the stuff that I spent hours and hours Googling and trying to do myself. And so you know, if there are other accountants in the group, it's a fantastic way to add value, and introducing those people to Katie can actually do that as well. We're all small business owners, and just having people that sort of volunteer that information, support and guidance without you having to ask for it actually goes a really, really long way. It's not about selling Katie, it's about supporting our clients. And so but yeah, just to anyone in the room that has plans, isn't currently an employer but is thinking about it, for anything to do with PAYE and pensions, just reach out to us. That's something that we can just completely take off your hands and do for you. And then just as we're waiting for some questions, I made a couple of notes just about, I think there's a couple of different things that I've learned in the last 2 years, and I definitely wasn't somebody who ever had aspirations or dreams of becoming an employer. It's not something that I thought would ever like fit my personality type. And so like I've learned a lot about myself along the way. And I think the biggest thing is about just like being a vulnerable leader, over communicating with your staff. Like Katie was saying, doing things annually is not enough. So we do monthly personal development with our team, which is nothing to do with inside of work. It's all, you know, how are you doing with the cost of living? How are your personal finances? What, you know, are you planning to save for a house? Do you want to speak to a mortgage advisor or a financial advisor? Every single time we do appraisals, so month 1, 2, 3, 6, and then formal appraisals every 6 months from there. We've actually integrated into those conversations, firstly, upward feedback. So James and I as leaders ask for feedback from every single member of staff at every single touch point, how we could do better as leaders. But also, actually, we ask them if they are happy to talk about if they were to leave us. Why would they leave us? Like, what could happen in the next 12 months that would cause you to leave? And actually having that feedback, you know, it could be that we can do something to change it. It could be, and again, above anything else, it's about the team seeing us being proactive about these things and actually really willing to help. and sort of giving them an opportunity to volunteer these things rather than them having to pluck up the conversation with us. Another top tip, which is something that I've never heard anybody else speak about, and it's something that we do, is we financially save money for new staff. So for us, as we've grown over the last 2 years, it's gone from just being James to me and James to we're now looking for our 12th member of staff. That's really expensive. Like, and I'm not just talking about their wages, I'm talking for every single member of staff. And I know Katie actually said about having really high quality things and making sure that your benefits package is really top notch. And for us, that sort of overspills into equipment. And so like, I don't want an accountant working on a computer that doesn't have a number pad. They're more expensive, but actually like I'm just setting them up to fail. I'm setting them up to be quite slow, having to like manually type numbers in. And so for us, we really like to invest quite a lot of money, making sure that people have got all of the equipment that they need. They're not having to ask for stuff. If anyone answers the phone, they get headsets, like nice headsets as well, not like weird plastic ones that hurt your head. And actually all of that stuff is quite expensive. And so we actually set money aside every month for a couple of different things. So we set aside money, cash, into a little starling pot every single month for new employees, so that the next time we have a new employee, we just draw down against that to buy the assets that we are buying. And then also for like our work occasions and like annual benefits like Christmas parties, we set aside cash every single month as well. We're just nerds to accountants running a business, and so obviously we love stuff like that, but it's not something that I've heard anybody else talk about. And those are actually the things that can incur cash flow problems, or just like not smooth onboarding for your staff. Like if you don't have the cash, like a lot of people, when they think about hiring, they only think about being able to afford the wages each month, and actually like there are so many costs associated with bringing in new staff, and just making sure that you've got the cash behind you to do it well, again, just makes the person feel like you're expecting them and can make their onboarding experience a lot better. Please do, like, sorry, this is my TED talk, but like if anybody has questions, like please put them in the chat. Like that's what Katie's here for. I think actually, like me, Katie's probably answered a lot of your questions. There's also some amazing, if anybody wants any book recommendations on how to create a company culture and scale a business that generates intrapreneurs, not entrepreneurs. That was a part of learning that I got stuck into in my MBA, which I was just fascinated by. I think as a business owner, sometimes the worry is that if you're scaling very rapidly and you're running a successful business, that could appear quite attractive to your staff, and actually it could make them think, I'm going to go do this for myself. And so there's some really, really great educational books that are very, very interesting on how to create intrapreneurs, which are people that actually like the support of being employed, but can bring fantastic entrepreneurship and new ideas to your business. And that's something that we are constantly trying to tap into by attracting really great talent, but also sort of like not making being the business owner particularly glamorous, because it's not. And like it can do great things for your business as well. But if anybody wants some really nerdy book recommendations, that's a part of, you know, being a business owner and being an employer that I was really excited about. Onboarding as well, I just wanted to give some insight into that. So when I think about our first member of staff compared to now, I literally want to like bang my head against my desk because I'm like embarrassed about the onboarding. So Solomon was our first member of staff. He started working from our kitchen table. The HR around him getting a bad back, I don't want to talk about, but yeah, like the onboarding for us, as Katie actually referred to it as like a living document, which I really liked. For us, that onboarding process just gets better and better and better every single time. We send welcome packs to new members of staff, which just details out like a map of our office, where to park, who to ask for, telling them where they can go to get lunch. We actually say, like, even saying explicitly in our welcome pack, like everybody brings lunch, so like bring lunch so that you don't feel left out, or you haven't got to leave the office to go to the shop. Tell people there's a fridge and stuff like that. Just over.
Yeah, I think that's really important actually, because you shouldn't underestimate that like social side of things. That like if you, I've done it myself. One of the clients I'm working with, like they're in this really odd location and it's miles to go to like a Pret or whatever. And I didn't realise that to start with, but now I know, like if I buy my lunch on the way down to the office, like right next to Blackfriars where there's loads of Pret a Mondays or whatever, then, and but no one said that to me, like, oh, by the way, there's nowhere to buy lunch around here. So it does make a huge difference to that. And also that thing of like, again, it sounds silly, but like we'll take you out for lunch on your first day, don't bring lunch on your first
Yeah.
day. Or also, you know, you don't have to say that, but do you know what I mean? Like those kind of real, you think, oh, that's little, but like actually it's not, because.
And that's what I mean about like over communicating. Like we
Yeah.
literally have it in our day one checklist as like number one, show the person where the toilet is. Like I don't want anyone sat like busting for a wee on their first day, because no one's had like actually engaged their brain because they know where the toilet is, to not show someone where the toilet is. And just over communicating as much as possible with new staff, because again, I feel like everybody has had, we should have a separate session, but I feel like everybody has had those jobs, or like when you turn up for work experience and like no one's expecting you, you get passed around from pillar to post, you've got nothing to do, and like that's just not a fun experience. You don't feel welcome. Like that's not a welcome. And so things like welcome packs for us is a really great way to actually firstly set the standard of the work that we do. So like this is the standard that you're expecting. Our clients' onboarding is exactly the same experience for them as well. So it really sets the standard of the work we provide, but also just makes them feel welcome. We give them a budget to do Fun Friday, where we just give them a pot of money and a set amount of time, and we just do something fun together. But yeah, there was a couple of bits. Sorry, that was my TED Talk's over. There's a couple of bits. I did post a link in the chat. I actually created a YouTube video all about apprenticeships because I was an apprentice myself. I absolutely love the apprenticeship scheme. It's something that if you've not been a part of, you might not know very much about. And so for small business owners, they are fantastic. The apprenticeship scheme covers 95% of the cost of studying. For us as employers, we only contribute 5%. You don't have to pay the minimum wage. I am sponsored by not paying apprentices minimum wage, but they are a fantastic way to get like training, developing people into your business, maybe before you could afford to hire them through any other routes. There is a YouTube video if you want to check that out. Again, please don't be afraid to ask for help, ask questions, ask other small business owners, ask me. I would love to talk to you about the apprenticeship scheme. Access to work is just another thing that I wanted to talk about. If you are hiring and you do get people, as employers, we can't discriminate against people. I have a disability myself, and so access to work is actually a government-run scheme, so that if you are hiring people with disabilities or with extra needs, it can help you as an employer and the employee get everything that they need, whether it's hardware, software, set up, ready to go. I'm hard of hearing, and so there's lots of practical things that employers can do to just make my life a little bit easier. And so access to work is a government-led scheme, and the government actually fund anything that you as an employer need to get your job and your workplace ready for an individual that has special needs. And then my question, I just have a question for Katie, which is like, have you seen any changes to HR during and post-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest one that I touched on very briefly is the whole hybrid flexible work thing, because, you know, it just didn't really exist before, not in the same way that it does now. And that has been a huge mind shift for a lot of employers. And, you know, managing it properly is actually quite tricky, because, you know, are people as engaged? Are they not? Like, what are the expectations? I had a conversation with one client about, you know, someone was on a call, and you kind of, like, this kind of made me laugh, but like, someone was on a call with a client, and then their doorbell rang, and they were like, oh, I'm having some paving slabs delivered. I need to go and deal with it. So they disappeared off a client call and like went and like dealt with their paving slabs. And he was just like, the like boss guy was just like, oh my God, I didn't think I needed to like have a conversation with adults about not answering the doorbell and disappearing on a client call, but apparently I do need to. So it's things like that that have kind of taken people a bit by surprise, because obviously we all kind of just transitioned to working from home like overnight, and it was like such a shock. But I think now there's this kind of hybrid approach. I do think there's going to be a lot more coming out in the HR space about how to manage it effectively, like what works best, what doesn't work best. Because again, you know, I've had people where I've had to say to them like, oh, well, you know, these are the days that we ask people to come in, and they've turned around to me and said, please don't make me work at home. Like, I absolutely hated it during COVID. I just need to be in the office with other people. And it's like, that's absolutely fine. It's not going to suit everyone. So it's just kind of, yeah, it's quite different. And it's still very much like a growing topic, basically. I think that's the biggest one at the moment.
Amazing. And then my final question is just like, how can people find out more? What are the best ways to work with you? I am sponsored by HR Katie. So like, can you just tell everybody a little bit about how they can work with you, what the options are?
Yeah, so I've just put up a slide, sorry, with all of my like contact details and everything. So I am mainly on Instagram, which surprises most people, but that is where Rachel and I met. So it obviously works. And that's where Rachel gets most of her business as well. So that surprises people too. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So I do share a lot of information on there just for free. If anyone is looking for just general hints and tips and advice, I'm all about just sort of sharing the knowledge as much as possible. But if people are interested in working with me, I do have what I am calling an HR membership, but I may be trying, I don't know, subscription. Anyway, it's a small business retainer, basically. So if you want to work with me on a regular basis, it's called the HR Hub. And for a very small, reasonable monthly fee, you get an hour with me. But as part of the hub, there's also access to loads of documents, loads of templates, worksheets, guidance. So it's kind of like HR in a box. And the view would be, as Rachel's found, that like, hopefully like over time you could use the templates and the things to do the sort of day-to-day HRy bits, but then come to me for the kind of bigger picture stuff or helping with the more serious issues. So yeah, so that's the HR Hub. There's more information about it on my website. Would love to help more people in there. And yeah, come and say hi, come and follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn, and be great to get to know some of you a bit more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. I have a lot of people who are waiting for the recording. They couldn't actually come to the session live. So thank you so much for your time, Katie. We're all so grateful. Katie would absolutely love to see you on social media, on her website, especially for lots and lots of feedback. As small business owners, like, please give feedback. If you have lots of lovely things to say about Katie, Katie's a small business like we are. And so reviews, references, feedback about your experience today can help Katie do more things, reach more people, and actually help translate the world of HR into real life. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. There's lots of people in the chat saying thank you. Thank you if you've been watching on demand, for spending some time with us again today. Yeah, just thank you so much. Thank you to Katie. Thank you to you guys for getting in touch, and I'll be sending the recording out later on today. So just keep a close eye on your inbox, anybody that's waiting for it.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Pleasure. My pleasure.